biggest opening round attendance since the 2019-20 season. The biggest ever TV audience reach for a regular season fixture on Saturday night for the Sydney Derby. Fan sentiment at what seems like an all-time high, a packed-out stadium to witness two of Europe's greats, and a new team on the block selling out for their first game all feels very foreign to the A-League. But there were plenty of old classics as well. Stupid red cards, Patrick Kisnorbo getting two-footed on the sideline, a fire alarm in MacArthur, the yellow fever landing the punchline of a bit 5 months later, and Daniel McBreen getting caught on a hot mic. The A-League is back on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachlan Avil and joining me tonight is Will Booth. First up today. Will, how are you going? How did you enjoy round one of A-League football?
Yeah, just great to be back. Really, there was a big hole in my life, and it's been filled slowly by the games being back. So no, love to see it, and yeah, I think a good round to kick us back off.
Absolutely. Jacob Stevens, hello. I have an interesting question for you off the bat. We saw two outstanding tifos this weekend for very different reasons. The RBB went with size and intimidation, and then the Yellow Fever went what could maybe be described as the cost-effective route, just the little two, the two that they forgot during one of their tifos towards the end of last season. I think both have their merits, but I'm partial to the Phoenix one. I love that little joke.
Yeah, I love the meme there. Like I respect that. Like the RBB one, it's like just RBB. Like that's boring, guys. Come on, like that's just your name. Like come up with something. Like that's brilliant. I love the two, and then the post saying, "Oh, found it" as well. That's so good. Yeah, I admire the commitment there.
Yeah, very good areas indeed. All right, well, we are back, of course, for another season of A-League on the Round Ball Australia podcast. We have made a few changes this year, and hopefully for the better as well. We've made a pretty conscious effort to make this a lot more video-friendly as well. So if you're listening to this in your car or on the train to work or whatever on Tuesday morning, don't worry, it's still perfectly appropriate for podcast form. But if you are at your computer and you do have the ability, consider flicking on the video, going to YouTube as well, and hopefully you'll have a good time. But our game in focus is, of course, the Sydney Derby to kick us off on round one. Saturday night, Douglas Costa versus Juan Mata, the clash of the Titans. Will, it turned out that one of our Titans wasn't quite match fit enough to start and play the full 90 minutes, but we did get at least a little 30 minutes of them together, at least.
Yeah, Mata, came on late there, as you said, and had a few good touches, like one little run and a little bit enough, just a little bit of a taste into what we can expect from him maybe. But he definitely did struggle as they did go behind. So they were just chasing the game, and he might not have been the right sub if the game was at 2-1 down and you're chasing. That was the most minutes he'd played in 18 months, I think. And he only played 30. So that's saying a lot there. And yeah, you could kind of tell it was an introduction and hopefully not the ceiling. But Costa, yeah, obviously stole the show in that battle for sure. He, didn't seem to make a wrong decision on the field. I think the one little mistake he had did lead to the Wanderers' goal, giving it away a little bit, trying a flick inside in his defensive third. But the rest of Costa's touches were you could just sense his class. You could just see it. It was his decision making as well. He just always made the right decision, and really he started off a bit deeper and linking up with Courtney Perkins really well. And he didn't seem to be getting on the end of moves, but he was releasing Courtney Perkins really, really well down the left, and just that kind of gave Sydney the head start in this game. I think they looked really threatening early, but yeah, the stars were, the big signings that have come in all really did look, as we'd expect, really, really good. They were rotating so well around the field. Just the interplay everywhere was elite. It really looked like it came together. So I think, 2-1 is not really reflective of how the game actually went. But Stadge definitely kind of set them up in that way. I think, he set them up in a way that they would have a few chances on the break and stretch the field, get in behind, but they just didn't have a night for finishing because, when they got to the chances, they just didn't put them away. I think Hammond blasted one over on the cusp of halftime that really, really, really could have changed the game a lot. Got into the sheds 1-1. He did make up for it later, but yeah, it was just a little too late there. The momentum definitely just kind of stayed in Sydney's favour. I think they had, the lion's share of the ball. And an impressive performance for the first game of the season.
Jacob, one of our worries, probably it was shared by a lot of A-League fans when we heard that Douglas Costa and Juan Mata were coming in. Obviously, we've been burnt so many times about Marquez coming into the league and not performing and oftentimes not even playing. I think we've pretty firmly put the Douglas Costa one to bed now. We've seen his quality in pre-season and the ACL tour and now in the A-League as well. Juan Mata obviously has a little way to go. Here's what Alan Stajic said post-game about not starting Juan Mata.
We knew it was going to be a derby and high tempo, and especially at the beginning of the game, and two high energetic teams on top of that. So I just didn't really want to waste his energy in the first 15 minutes, half an hour when I knew the game would be at its highest tempo, and I think it was at that period. And we really need his quality to shine in crucial moments of the game. And it was a flip of the coin whether to start him or not. I think he does have the fitness to play longer. Definitely came in with a decent base, but yeah, it's going to take him some time to get used to playing match minutes and regular match minutes again.
So it's clear that Juan is on that journey towards playing full 90 minutes for the club, and hopefully that comes sooner rather than later. But at least definitely on the Douglas Costa side as well. It's good that we're seeing a lot of quality, and this marquee really is backing up that performance.
Yeah, and it's not just he's not just showing his quality, and it's like it looks easy for him, and he's not really putting in the effort. Like, you can tell that with Douglas Costa, there's intent there. Like, he wants to play well, he wants to get the win, he wants to do a good job. Perhaps he's aware of sort of the reputation that these big name foreign players have in the A-League, and he's like, I don't want to join this wall of losers. Like, I want to go on and actually be one that people like, because it doesn't come around often. And I mean, you really look at it, the last one was a Sydney FC player with Del Piero. So, it's he's got a lot to live up to. And so far, like you said, it looks like he's been nailing it. And you can see the intent there. That's the main thing, right? Is that he's got that drive, that energy, that push. He's putting in 100% at all times. He's trying things, even if they don't work. He gives the ball away and it leads to the Wanderers goal, like Will says, but he's trying something different. Like, he wants to make a difference in the game. And you can really, really tell that even just watching on TV or on your phone or whatever, wherever you're watching it, like, you can see that he's got this little something about him. Juan Mata, we didn't really get to see a huge amount of him. And yeah, as Stadge has said there, conditioning is a big issue. And this is another issue that we've seen with foreign players, right? Is that they're not fit enough, or they're not used to the conditions here in Australia, typically firmer pitches, hot weather, like it's not quite what they're used to. And it can take a toll on them. I mean, we saw Daniel Sturridge the other year for Perth, played all of about 30 seconds, and that was it. So, Juan Mata's beat him out there at least, which is a good thing. But yeah, hopefully he's able to get implemented into that Wanderers side a bit more, because I think that really one of the key things for the Wanderers in this game was they were just missing the midfield almost entirely. I think I posted in the group chat, I was like, where are the Wanderers midfield this whole game? And I think it was actually brought up in commentary as well. They were saying, like, Wanderers aren't bothering with playing through the press. They're just going to play over it and just launch balls long all game long. And that's what they did. And they weren't the only side this round to play long balls either, but we'll get to that. But yeah, it just was like they lacked that something in the center of the park, and I think that a fully fit Juan Mata would give them that, and it would then also give a bit of confidence to the other guys that he's going to have around him there in the middle of the park to go on and play a bit better, which we've sort of seen, I suppose, with Douglas Costa up front for Sydney, right? Everything looks so fluid up there, and it's just it's so free flowing and beautiful to watch, and that's it's not entirely down to Douglas Costa, but you can tell he's had a big impact on it. Likewise, I think that Juan Mata could have that sort of an impact on the Wanderers midfield. It's just about getting fit enough to get there. And I don't think that starting him in the derby in round one when he's not fit is going to set you up for success later on down the line when you do need him in those games towards the back end of the season and he's not fit and he's injured because you've overused him too early. So I think easing him in is the smart move. It's a bit disappointing, obviously, because this was built up to be this big clash of these two import players, and we didn't really get that because they didn't share a whole lot on the pitch together, and Juan Mata didn't have much of an impact. But yeah, I think from a coaching perspective, it was a smart move from Stadge not to go too hard too early with Juan Mata, because you don't want to burn up what's potentially your biggest weapon towards the at the start of the season when you're going to need him in the back end as well.
Just allows us to have that build up all over again for the next
That's
derby,
right, yeah.
Mata versus
look
Costa.
at the positives.
90 minutes. That's the tagline. 90 minutes this time. Will, in terms of the result, 2-1 Sydney, it feels kind of on par of where we thought these teams might be in terms of Sydney being this really out and out force, played what I think everyone presumes is their strongest 11 out on the park. Wanderers obviously missing Lawrence Thomas, although the kid that they brought in had an exceptional game, I thought, as well. And regardless of what the exact performances are, Sydney edge a close victory. It's kind of close to what we kind of thought may have happened.
Yeah, I think maybe not the scoreline, exactly, but definitely the way the game played out was kind of what we had imagined. I think 2-1 is, with Wanderers with some key outs. Jacob said they were lacking in midfield. I think that's due to Priestman being out as well. A little change of shape there. I think they were out of a bit of personnel there. As you said, Lockie as well. I thought Vidakovic was fantastic. That save is probably save of the round for me. And a theme that we're going to get into later with these young keepers. But yeah, I think a lot of personnel out for Wanderers. They were just never going to be at their strongest. So I think Stadge set them up the best way he could to win, to get a result from this game. As ugly as it was, kind of, there was already Wanderers fans afterwards not too happy with the performance. But I thought that's kind of all he could do. And a 2-1 result against this Sydney side, I think it's going to be one of the closest encounters throughout the season. I think a lot of teams will be happy with a 1-goal defeat to them. But yeah, going back to what Jacob said as well, they were just so open. Like the first goal that Lolly scores comes from a header off a goal kick from Sydney's, from the halfway line, and it travels all the way to the 18-yard box, and then Klamala nods it on for Lolly, and it was just so easy. And it's just, if you're that easy, like bypassing it in attack is all good. Not really wanting to control the center when you're on the ball is fine, but you can't be set up defensively like that. They were just gaping holes right there. Mm-hmm. Took 2 touches and bang Lollies in. So, I mean, yeah, I think it was honestly lucky that it wasn't more on the night. It could have been a lot more, and then the fans would have had a lot more to be upset with, I think.
And what about the occasion itself, Jacob? This big Sydney derby at CommBank Stadium. They did get it sold out in the end, which is awesome. It vindicates that move for me to put it at the start of the season. You get all that run up time with the promo of Costa versus Mata, and it built up. From all reports that I've seen online, the police presence was very friendly, very understandable. They were a lot more chill. Obviously, this was the site of a mass walkout last season when there was an interaction between members of the RBB and the police and stadium security. So very good that kind of situation hasn't happened again. It appears that a lot of those issues have been sorted out. And it was a great spectacle. You got the RBB on one side, you got the Cove on the other, chanting the whole time. It's a mirror of exactly what we want football to be in this country.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously wasn't there. I was watching, I wasn't even watching the first half. I just had the commentary on for the first half driving home from work. And then the second half, I had it up on my computer here watching it. And I mean, the atmosphere from what I could tell was just insane. And like you said, it's exactly what we want from football. It was, obviously it's a rivalry game, so it's heated, but everyone behaves themselves. And I think that's the number one thing, right, is that there weren't any problems that we're aware of. Everyone behaved themselves, and yet it was still this fantastic spectacle and a great advert for the sport. When you can sell out a stadium, have they sold out CommBank before for a Wanderers game? I'm not sure they have. So that in itself is a massive achievement. It just felt like a proper Sydney derby again, and it feels like it's been a while since we've had one of those where it's, yes, it's helped that there's been this hype around it because of Douglas Costa and One Masher, it being round one, it being sort of this start to this new season that just seems reinvigorated. But the crowd turned up, they did a fantastic job, they sung their hearts out for the full 90 minutes, both sides, and there's not much more you can ask for. And crowds as a whole, I thought were pretty solid this weekend. I mean, there were a couple that were on the lower side, but I don't think that was necessarily unexpected with the teams that were playing. And then the ones that we thought would bring in good crowds, did bring in good crowds, and that's, the Sydney Derby and the Auckland game. So, I think absolutely nailed it there this week, and hopefully it's something that continues as well. We see this hype continue on. The Wanderers fans, don't just give up after round one, right? Just keep going out there, keep backing your team. Sydney fans, okay, not every week is a derby, but, you've got a massive stadium to fill, so go out there and fill it. There's all these reasons to keep going out there and keep supporting your team. And if nothing more, it's to go out there and watch football live, right? I mean, there's no better way to watch football than to watch it in person. You could watch the most dire, boring football, and it's more entertaining because you're there. So no, hopefully it's something that we see continue. Hopefully we see these scenes continue throughout the season, and we get more great crowds and more great atmospheres, because it's what really makes the A-League unique among sports here in Australia. And it's something that sort of we've lost the way with it a little bit in recent years. So if it's starting to come back, I think that's a really good sign.
Absolutely. And Will, from one awesome, brilliant A-League occasion to another, Auckland FC, their first game in the A-League men's competition, packed out Go Media Stadium, almost 25,000. They almost broke the record for the largest crowd at an A-League team's first home game. Of course, I'm sure health and safety limits were the preventer, unfortunately. I'm sure there would have been more people trying to get in. But the atmosphere looked incredible. It was such a great day, even regardless of the win and the 2-0 result. Just for this culmination of Auckland FC, the ownership and the management of the club have worked extremely hard to embed this team in the local community. That started with lots of different community efforts, bringing in local Kiwi players, and those efforts have all been rewarded. And we saw the support for the club on the weekend. And one of the smoothest, best, most entertaining entries into the league from an expansion club that we've seen.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've set the bar for how to come to a league, and it just shows the value of accessing an untapped market and having people behind the club with that sports background. And okay, holistically in football, multi-club ownerships are not a great thing, but to Australia, I think that setup does benefit us. So on this point, I will be positive about this whole endeavor. But no, you can see it in how it's refreshing to see such competence in a club, and they've forged an identity already. They've got the fan base. They've got everything right. I can't say anything that they've really gotten wrong so far. I think the squad building has been excellent. I'll get onto that, but then even the backroom staff, I was reading about them, and they have like double the average kind of amount of backroom staff and full-time employees that other clubs have. Other clubs are running on skeleton staff levels and really being stretched thin resource-wise, but it shows the value of providing a full support management group behind a team, and just how rock solid this has looked on their arrival. It's fantastic to see. But yeah, to go to their squad building as well, it's Gillian was one of the most exciting players on the field, and he came from Auckland City.
Mm-hmm.
They've just nailed the balance between experience and New Zealand youth, and they're younger players that have high ceilings. Rogerson, has gone away, played in the lower European leagues, come back, has looked really impressive, got his goal. I think the coolest finish I've ever seen in the league.
Did he make? I don't even know. Like, it seemed like he just accidentally did it and tried to play it off. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe he just thought it was gone. The opportunity was gone. I thought it was. I thought the attack was broken down, but he found the net still at that angle, and it was a very calm finish. Like, awesome to see. But they got everything. They got a massive slide.
That's the best bit. That's the best bit about them.
Yeah.
They've got active supporter groups with 3 members already. Bringing division into the club and bringing some outside banter. So it feels A-League, right? It feels A-League. They feel like they've been part of the furniture already for a long time. So no, it's just so impressive to see. And that's not even getting to the performance on the field.
Yeah, it was a remarkable day. And Jacob, we've talked about this in terms of Sydney FC, but I think it applies to Auckland as well, is that when you nail your international signings, it just sets such a good foundation for you to build on. You got Hiroki Sakai and De Vries at either fullback, who were both exceptional, Verstrata and Gallegos in midfield. And then Guillermo made that ball to find Sakai out on the right that created the goal was just a little touch of magic as well. All five had brilliant games. And if they can get anywhere close to that for the rest of the season, it's just such a good base, as I say, for then your locals and a couple of Aussies, of course, to provide the cherry on top.
And I think that was really the big question for them, right? Is that those early days of announcements of players was all local New Zealand players that some people probably had never heard of before, or if they had done, it was typically not for good reasons. And it's, do you remember that poor performance he had when he was playing for New Zealand? Or they sort of almost knew they had a point to prove with their foreign signings and that they had to nail it. And it's only round one. It's a bit hyperbolic to go on about, they're going to go win the league or whatever, right? But they did look very, very good, and it did look like that they'd made a squad that had nice balance. And it's because they've got balance in the players that they've brought in from overseas, right? They've not just loaded them all in attack or all in defence. It's spread across the field. And I think you saw that, in this game where it didn't look like there was one area for them that was particularly weak, right? I mean, Hiroki Sakai and De Vrij, you mentioned them before, just were so good. I mean, okay, yes, it's against Brisbane, but they looked, nothing was going to get past them. They looked pretty dynamic on the ball as well. Yeah, Verstraete in the middle, sort of, I think, could go under the radar a bit this season. Sort of somebody not a lot of people had heard of. I hadn't really heard of him before either when he was announced, but he looks to be the goods. It is a good balance squad because they've got good balanced foreign signings, and that's something that I think the clubs have really been lacking over the last few years. They've either been not filling up their visa spots, or they've been filling them up with wasted players who sit on the bench or whatever. It's like you need to get starters in, and you need to make sure that they complement the players that you do have in your squad. They fill holes where they can, and they're not just depth pieces. And I think that's exactly what Auckland have done. And their squad looks good. I sort of, in my pre-season predictions, I wasn't quite sure where to put them because we hadn't seen them really play competitive minutes yet. And now having them ninth, I think I've severely underrated them because they do look very good. Obviously, there's a whole season ahead of us, so let's not get too crazy too early. But no, you're spot on, Lockie, that they do look very, very good, and that's in no small part because of the visa players that they've got.
For round one, we thought it would be a good idea if, in terms of, we'd all pick a team that were our biggest movers for the rounds in terms of our expectations of what we thought they would be before the season and what round one has proved to us. And Will, your biggest mover that you picked was Auckland.
Yeah, and I mean, I was pretty positive about them, in our predictions and season previews as well. I think I have them just sneaking into finals, but even then I'm impressed, and they've definitely moved for me the most. Sydney's, display was probably more impressive overall, but that was already a bar that we knew that they could reach. So for this Auckland team to come in and look just this solid, and better performing than a lot of the other teams in performances we saw around the grounds this week, they just looked like a force. And I think they will go deep. They're gritty. Jacob, got into it really well there, but like that squad building was just so balanced. And I thought Bill Foley, the Jacob, you and Poletti will probably know more than me about this, but the Knights, right? The hockey
Vegas,
team, Vegas Knights. That's it. So such an aggressive introduction into the league, and already won 2 Stanley Cups. Eastern Cups, whatever you play for over there.
It's just one, isn't it? It's just one?
Or one or two finals?
Okay. 2 finals and 1 cup,
2 finals, 1 cup, there we go. And then, but I thought it would be an aggressive expansion, and maybe they go too high. They try and get the kind of Premier League player, ex-Premier League player to kind of go flashy and build in that way. That's kind of what it seems, but they've just really been smart with everything. So I think for me that they were the biggest mover, in my opinion.
Well, to be fair, we actually do know that they did go after Chris Wood.
That makes sense. That makes sense for the league. I think it's a bit too early. Chris Wood is showing that he's banging them in the Premier League. So he's
also not a visa signing either.
No, so exactly. Bring him home. That one made more sense, right? That's a smart decision, I think, overall. Still, and a couple of years, I think we will see him here. But I just expected the who's playing in Turkey now that we can get, and who will get some instant fans on seats at the start and build that hype. But they've built the hype in a completely different way, and it's really refreshing to see.
And then, Jacob, the other team in this game, Brisbane Roar, I don't think many of us had a lot of expectations for them heading over there.
Yeah, you did.
No, hold on. Let's get this straight, okay?
Game.
I thought they're going to build into the season, all right? But this was always going to be Auckland's day. Yeah. There's a long season ahead. Mm-hmm. Anything can happen. I actually don't think they played horribly. Obviously, one of the peak A-League moments in this game is that Auckland's first ever goal scorer will forever be known as own goal Harry van der Saag. It's just unfortunate. I didn't think he had a great game overall. It felt like he'd lost a fair few duels and maybe didn't take some chances going forward. I think there are still some really good pieces in there for the Raw. I just think it's going to take them a little while to click, and that's it.
I'm not surprised in the slightest, to be honest, with the way they performed. I really don't rate the Raw this season. I don't think that they've particularly improved. I do think they've got some good players, right? Jay O'Shea, I mean, you've mentioned him before, Lockie, as being one of the best holding midfielders, if not the best holding midfielder in the league. And I agree with that statement, but I just think the pieces around him just do not inspire much confidence at all. I mean, Harry van der Saag is one who I think he can be a good player, but he's just not had enough minutes in his career to be able to get to the point where he can be a consistent starter for an A-League side. You got, a defence that also then consists of Ben Warland, who has not been fantastic his whole career. Up front, there's just a whole lot of really nothing going on there for the Raw. I mean, obviously there's the whole Tommy Waddingham thing and, Tottenham wanted him but we yet to really see why Tottenham wanted him yet in A-League matches, right? Like, we've not really been blown away by him too much. He's an exciting piece. Jay O'Shea is an exciting piece, but it just feels like there's a whole lot of just meh around them. And so I can't say that I'm overly surprised that they didn't play particularly well in this game.
Will, despite Adelaide United having the bye in round one, we still got the United pessimism segment sneaking in there somehow.
It's what happens when you sign, the whole right side of the team where it's Adelaide in the centre back there, and where did the negative performances come from? I mean, I kind of agree with Jacob. I mean, I agree with both of you. Okay, I think Brisbane can take some scalps this year. I think when it will click, it will be exciting and it will be good. But I just don't think they can do it over a season. I think when you're starting Ben Halloran and players like that, no offense, he's been a good servant for the league, but his time, I don't know. It's just a bit uninspiring, as you said there, Jacob. So, no, I see where both of you are coming from.
All right. Well, when a new season rolls around, it's always full of optimism and hope for a new and fresh campaign ahead. But unfortunately for Perth Glory, it was more of the same.
We have just witnessed one of the absolute worst performances I've probably ever seen from a Perth Glory side, maybe ever.
From an A-League side.
From an A-League side, maybe, honestly.
It was deplorable. Really deplorable. The efforts were really poor. And I'm just so disappointed for the fans that were there to watch the game.
It's one of those games where you just want to forget it completely. You train so hard in the off-season, pre-season for this moment, and it's just obviously started horribly.
Last season, our last two away games, 7-1 loss to Sydney FC, 8-0 loss to Melbourne City. On no way for a professional football team is that acceptable ever.
I just think that it was a culmination of a lot of things just went in that first 45. We just got caught out and found out with the with some of the players that were underdone, and also in the first 10 minutes it just went bang bang, and then obviously then a little bit of nervousness, and so for us we were just a yard off all the time, and then they got out through our pressure and were able to create opportunities.
So, Jacob, players underdone, just a yard off all the way, led to a 6-1 defeat for Perth Glory, and especially the way they finished last season, that's really going to rub a few Glory fans the wrong way.
Yeah, it's almost a like-for-like result of what we would have expected to see at the back end of their season. But also, it's a case of, wasn't this one of the big question marks, right? Are the players going to be ready for Drillable? Like, are they going to be up to the standard? And I think we saw that they weren't, right? I think the fullbacks played particularly poorly. That they're just that's not a whole lot that they did very well. I don't think the midfield was up to the intensity that was required. Luke Bodnar, one that stood out for me, is just really not being anywhere. And when he did get on the ball, he didn't have his usual sort of poise about him either. Very wasteful. It just, it was like a combination of things that went wrong. And look, Driller can say, the players are undercooked, but you've had a whole preseason. It's not like half your squad's brand new and you've just brought them in, a week before or anything like that. You didn't have the longest Oz Cup campaign, but you had plenty of time to get in some decent friendlies, get that fitness in, have them know the intensity that you're going to need. And it's just clear that that's not quite happened yet. And look, they're sort of my biggest movers this week because I've been ranting and raving about how I really like the Glory this season. I think they could do fantastic, and I like the vibe that they've got around them. But after this match, it kind of feels like same old Glory, and that perhaps they're even with this new coach, with this new pressing structure, with what looks to be an improved squad on paper, they're still not going to be able to perform to the level that a lot of people are expecting them to. So it's a bit disappointing from that perspective because I was really excited by them, and I actually thought this was going to be one of the, or if not the lowest scoring game of the round, right? With, a MacArthur team that likes to just sit back and absorb pressure. And we've seen them be really resolute throughout the Australia Cup. But then on the flip side, they don't score a lot. So they're not going to go up there and they're not going to score 4, 5, 6 goals. And then they did. It's good news for my fantasy team because I had Jackalish in. So, I got a bunch of points there. I think he's got a third of my points this round, which is great. But, in terms of what we were expecting, it's probably the complete opposite to what we were expecting. And for me, really disappointed in what I saw from Perth. And we saw there from the Shed End podcast in that little clip that, Glory fans are already in doom and gloom mode, which, I can't blame them. But, it is only round one. Give them some time. But, it's not great signs off the bat.
It is only round one, Will. But as I was saying, you come into a season with so much positivity. Even if you've been the Spooners and come off conceding 15 goals in your final 2 games, it's a fresh start. Everyone's on 0. But all of a sudden, you're not on 0. You're in 13th and by a decent goal difference. That it's going to be hard to respond from.
There weren't even many positives to take away. You couldn't even really see much in what they were trying to do. It's driller ball. It's this high press. That press is what cost them the game. It was so easy to get through. I remember I saw Adamson on the ball, 2 players steaming in on him, and then he just slots it straight through the middle. And then I think Holman bounces to Bratton, and they've got no one around them for 20 meters. They've got so much space, and it was just, you can cop a bad result if you can see positive aspects, and it's the first game under Drillage, but there was just nothing there to take away. There was really no optimism to hold on to. Did not make for good viewing. To turn MacArthur, who we all saw in the Australia Cup, where we saw how they played without Jaman, obviously. But you take one player out of MacArthur, and they looked like they had no attacking threat at all. And you cop 6 to them. It's not much to be happy about. I think you saw it in the later goals as well. I think they get a dodgy back pass goes to Labib, and he's got 10 meters on Jakalic, and Jakalic is not a young guy. Late in the game, he's got 10 meters ahead, but he just kind of gives up. I don't know if he thinks the keeper is coming, or there's a miscommunication there, but he can't lose that battle to the ball. And then I think it was the second phase from that play as well, with Shaman's goal is, man, the ball recycled back out to Jakalic. There's 4 or 5 Perth defenders in the box, and they're all set up. They're set up in position. The ball comes in. Jaman is obviously really good, and his movement is excellent, but they just
it's flat-footed defending. Yeah.
The mentality just seems broken already, and it seems like it's carried over from last season somehow. Even though we've had such a refresh and new management and a bunch of new players, you just still got remnants of how we saw them last season. And last season, the last couple games were forgivable, right? I think they were forgivable in the fact that you're at the end of the season, you're on the beach, as they say. Those performances can happen. A few go in early and it just derails you. You're out for that game. But that's fine because, they were out of finals contention. They were out of it. There was nothing to play for. This is the first game of the season. They have something to play for, but they just did not look like it. So, a grim viewing there.
So, Jacob, it sounds a lot like we're saying Perth Glory bad rather than MacArthur good.
Well, no, I think it's just that the Perth Glory being bad has taken more of the attention away, and also the fact that I think quite a few of us kind of expect MacArthur to be pretty decent this season, at least from what we've seen in the Cup, and if that can translate into league play, that they'll be a tough team to break down, and they'll take chances when they get them if they can create many of them during a game. Here they managed to create a bunch of chances and they took almost all of them. So it does go to show the sort of efficiency that they have in front of goal, which they're going to need if they're going to want to continue to play like they did in the Oz Cup, where they do play a little bit more defensive, where that game isn't as open. I think it was just the circumstances that with that Perth press, there was a lot more space for them to play into, so they could be more attacking more easily. They didn't, like Will said, they didn't really have to try to be able to break down the press. Part of that, the problem there is that the press that Zdrilic wants to use, obviously the Leipzig press, there's more to it than just throwing as many players towards the ball as you can really, really quickly. There's a lot of really high detailed rotations and movements that have to happen to afford these players to be able to press the ball, and Perth weren't doing any of that, which is why that space was opening up so easily for MacArthur. But yeah, I don't think MacArthur were very good, yes, but I think we were kind of expecting them to be good. But Perth were just so bad. They were so much worse than I think anybody expected them to be. That's sort of why it's taken all the attention one way rather than sort of splitting it evenly or even giving a bit of praise to MacArthur.
Just to go off that, I think we're all sleeping on the MacArthur front line. I think Jakalic is just, how many times are we going to see him score that goal? He's got the quality to carry MacArthur through games, and we saw it in I think it was the win against Newcastle in the Cup. He can be that player that just puts the team on the back for periods, but he's also got quality there in Jaman. I think Jed Drew had one of his best games I've seen him play. He was electric. So. I think we've been misled a little bit by the Australia Cup form, and you lose a lot with Jaman's movement, and he didn't really get involved until the last goal. But it's just his off-the-ball movement's excellent, and it opens teams up and allows the other players to shine. So I think, it's always a conversation, Perth bad or MacArthur good, but I don't want to, go without giving MacArthur praise, because I think, they'll be an exciting team. I thought they would definitely be the gritty team and tough to break down, but no, they showed here that they can execute, and when it's coming off for them, they'll be a threat to anyone.
I was listening to Ben Garuccio on the Football Friends podcast earlier today, and one thing he was saying when they were talking about this game is just how sorry he felt for Ollie Sale. I don't think you can contribute a lot of those goals down to particular errors. It's just, what is a goalkeeper to do? Yeah. And so he's obviously not having a great time, and maybe he was hoping that he's 21 again, because it seems like a lot of young goalkeepers in the A-League, specifically in this round, are getting a lot of opportunities. And for me, headlined by Patrick Beach for Melbourne City. Yeah. Will, you picked Jamie Young in your fantasy team. He was your starter. We weren't quite sure who was going to be the number one for Melbourne City, but Vidmar was very clear that they wanted to experiment with their goalkeepers, and Beach was the one they picked. And he was exceptional for me. His shot stopping was very good when it needed to be. But what really stood out for me, Jacob, and I'm really fascinated to hear you talk about this, was the way that when City had the ball, he would step up and almost become part of a back three in possession, which not a lot of goalkeepers are entrusted to do, let alone a 21-year-old making his debut in the senior team. And it allowed more Melbourne City numbers to flood forward. They were getting overloads in midfield. They weren't quite as clinical as maybe they wanted to be in the final third, but they definitely didn't have any problem getting it there. And a large part of that was the confidence and the calmness and the composure of Patrick Beach on the ball as a goalkeeper. And it really allowed this Melbourne City system to be so effective.
Huge commodity nowadays, having a goalkeeper that can, be solid on the ball. And I think, was it the City women's side last season we saw doing a bit of this as well?
So that one was fascinating, even because the goalkeeper wouldn't even play in like a central position. She'd be like up in the back three and then over to the side as well. Over to the side,
yeah. But maybe they've been swapping notes there. But, it's a continuation of this back three phenomenon that we're seeing coming back in football nowadays. But different take on it, right? Because it's not having an additional defender back there and build up, it's having your goalkeeper there. Obviously a lot more risk associated with that, but like you mentioned, Beach looked like he'd been playing there his whole life. He's like, what's all the fuss about? Yeah, I'm a centre back, boys. What are you on about? Yeah, it's fine. I'll just play this pass or do this. Like, it didn't look like it was a problem for him, and that's insane. To be so young, first A-League start, and then just be like that on the ball, part of a back three. And you spoke about there what the advantages were to that, is that being able to get those players forwards and creating overloads in different areas, and you then have the stability of a back three in possession and having that additional option in build up that you get with a back three, whilst also having the benefit of a back two, which is having more players forwards. The only thing missing is that you don't have your goalkeeper all the way back. So no, it was a clever move and it really worked out. Obviously, like I said, there's a lot of risk associated with it, and we didn't really see Newcastle sort of not even try and exploit it. I mean, it did feel like that City were sort of prepared for it, for anything that might come from Newcastle in terms of a press, and were able to move the ball quite quickly, which helped. But if they do make mistakes, it'll be interesting to see if teams are able to capitalize on it, on the fact that they don't have their goalkeeper as deep, or if indeed this is a one-off thing for City, if they know that, okay, we're not likely to face much resistance in that area from Newcastle because they're not a team that likes to do that sort of press. So, we can have you step up, we can have that extra option and build up, and then we can, create overloads in other areas of the pitch which we can exploit. So, it could be a like a single game thing from Vidmar, or it could be this is how I want to play, in possession a whole season. So it'll be interesting to see going forwards which of the two it is. If it's sort of that tactical side of things, or if it's this is our style now. But fantastic to see. I like to see innovation. It's not the first time we've seen it in world football, right? It has happened on occasion, but it doesn't happen very often, because of the risk of having a poor pass from your goalkeeper and not having your goalkeeper back. But if you've got somebody like Beach who is just so comfortable on the ball, I'd be interested to know, has he played goalkeeper his whole life? Because, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if he came up through the system as, a central mid or something, the way that he looked on the ball, because it did look very composed. So if anybody out there can find out for us, that would be great. But no, huge advantage to have him to be able to play that position, but also really cool to see. And like I said, I love the innovation. I love trying different things. Obviously, I had my doubts about Vidmar when we were doing our chats in the preseason about it all. I was like, is he going to hold this team back, or is he going to enable them to play good football? And again, it's only round one, so let's not get carried away with ourselves. But it does look like, hey, you know what? He's got something that works here with this. And, when you've got a ball playing goalkeeper, that opens up so many avenues to do different things. And it could be really exciting for City.
Well, on that theme, and to round off our trio of biggest movers, mine is Melbourne City. And Jacob, I shared a lot of those exact same concerns. I think I actually had City down in 10th in terms of my ladder predictions. But, speaking to Aurelio before the game, it was quite clear that his team were quite well drilled over the off-season, that they had a plan. And for me, Will, what was even more impressive in terms of this game itself was that they were forced into a few personnel changes that maybe they wouldn't have been thinking about a month ago, but they made it work. Max Caputo, I forget exactly how long that was ago, maybe a little bit more than a month. But Andrew Naboo slotted into the central spot. And then, we had the Israeli player out on the wing as well. And then Nathaniel Atkinson, who definitely in a national team context, people think exclusively of as a right back, playing as a left-sided central midfielder, and playing very well to that point as well. So, they were forced to make some personnel changes and shuffle around what I'm sure would be their preferred starting 11, but they were still able to stick to these structures and their plans and use them quite effectively. Aziz Spage is another example. Sometimes he would hug the touchline right out on the left and allow more space for Jimmy Jeggo in the hole to pick up the ball. Other times he would vert and sit in the base of midfield and act as one of those players to move the ball out. So they had lots of little adjustments and rotations like that. They were obviously very well planned, and it was very effective for them. But again, not quite as effective as the final third as they'd want it to be. But I'm sure that will come with time. But I still think it was a pretty solid performance from City.
Yeah, and I echo the sentiment of Jacob and you, Lockie. These are progressive systems, and especially with the keeper in the back three, really progressive system that I didn't really expect out of Vidmar, to be honest. I think a lot of these tactical setups and the personnel, obviously dealing with so many injuries, probably the biggest injury list in the league. So it's out of necessity, but it's still interesting to see, and exciting that he's got these versatile players that can perform these multiple roles. So yeah, you're right. Like Nathaniel Atkinson, that nobody would have had that on their bingo card for this season, which it's really good to see. But I think we see in the modern game, especially, that the fullbacks perform a lot more tasks than traditionally have. So I do think the a six and a fullback's profile and skill set is quite similar. So often we see them inverting now. We saw Ryan Grant doing it in the Sydney game a fair bit, even, which is, you wouldn't have him down as that. He's always been that more attacking option. So that was surprising. But, you get the point. We do see these fullbacks tuck in and be the ball players. So, yeah, a lot of flexibility. Garkovic is really versatile. I think last season we saw him playing at fullback when they didn't have cover there as well. This time he's playing, a pretty advanced position. He's usually a six as well, basically, in his career. I think Andrew Naboo was kind of my call for the starting position up top. I think looking at Cohen, he's definitely played the majority of his games out wide, and I think Naboo has been solid. It was Socceroos' starting striker coming into a 2016. It was, right. I can't remember.
Gosh, it was a while ago.
But no, it's basically it was a while ago. But basically, was our best option as striker. So he's played there before and been relied upon. You also have Lecky, who can kind of play that role and has been really showing positional flexibility that we haven't seen until late in his career. So no, it's exciting to see that Vidmar can kind of get a tune out of these players in these roles. And I think a lot of people have maybe been a bit of trepidation around City and their placements in the season, but I still see them as having a pretty solid season.
And of course, though, that midfield is going to be shuffled around even more, Jacob, because of the red card to James Jego, which was one of two red cards to senior players in teams this weekend that seemed very, very preventable. Jego's obviously the worst, Rod McMiranda as well. Perhaps a little bit unfortunate, depends on where his eye line is. But on Jego's, it's silly. I know he was kicked beforehand, and there is a very fair argument that Costa should have been sent off as well. I think that is very close to a red card. Depends on which side of the clear and obvious line you sit on potentially. But regardless of that, Jego retaliates, this time on Eli Adams. A stamp clear as day. The referees get it 100% spot on. And all of a sudden, you're sending your team into a Melbourne derby next weekend without one of your most pivotal players. We talked about last season when they lost Hamza Saki, who played that pivot role in midfield, how much of an impact he had when he left the team. Well, James Jego is the player that's been given that responsibility this year, and they're heading into one of their biggest games in the season without him now.
Yeah, it just, preventable, like you said. It's that retaliation thing. I mean, like, you just don't retaliate on a football pitch, because that's what will get picked up, right? The referee is not going to catch that initial incident every single time, but they will see the retaliation. You can almost absolutely guarantee that they will see the retaliation. It's just so stupid from him, like completely needless, unnecessary, dumb. And now he's set his team up with a really difficult ask, next weekend. And, he's got nobody else to blame but himself. And his teammates should be pretty angry at him, to be honest. Like, it's inexcusable. Like, there's no reason to be doing what he did. It's just disappointing to see. But it's also, the A-League's back, because we're getting these two red cards in the opening weekend. And the Miranda one, you mentioned perhaps unfortunate. I don't think so. I think if you're putting your foot up that high in any circumstance, you're running the risk of not just, a foul, but a card and potentially a red card, especially when it's like that, where you're getting studs to the back of the, like almost like just behind the ear, and like cut him open. And it's just, again, that's a silly one, and it's completely preventable. Miranda's not a short bloke, right? There's no reason he can't just go up for the header there. But instead he's putting his foot up. And again, when you're playing football, if you put your foot up that high, it's going to be a high foot. What are you doing? This complete brain fade. And we were mentioning on the live stream when we were watching it that he is prone to having a couple of those every now and again, every season. He's happened to get this one out first round, get it out early, I suppose, out the system and focus on for the rest of the season now. But yeah, it wouldn't be the A-League without a couple of just stupid red cards. And here we are. We got them.
Yeah, if I remember correctly as well, I get the feeling that Miranda gave up a very cheap goal away to the Mariners last year as well. So maybe not the same vein of mistake, but another one of those silly mistakes that's preventable as well. And in terms of City, whereas, they then had to go and hold on to the game, which they did, Victory weren't clinical at all with their opportunities in front of goal. You think of Nishan Volupale missing an open net, Bruno Fornaroli from the penalty spot. All of a sudden, at about, I think it was, the 60th minute mark, Miranda goes off. They're forced into a defensive substitution. They have 10 men. They're actually missing out on the opportunity to go and then claim 3 points. And it was the Mariners that had the better of the last 30 minutes, as you'd expect. Now, they did hold on for a 0-0 draw, but you get to a point where both teams are probably thinking we should have won this game.
I think Roderick, the red card, I think that cost them the game, because the Victory up until that point had all the momentum, and Mariners really had no ideas about going forward. Even they were exploitable as well. We saw the rain come through and slowed the game down a fair bit. But Victory should have been up. As you said, Bruno's penalty miss, Nish looking maybe a bit fatigued from international duty and not as sharp, or I don't know if you'd think he'd supposed to be sharper, having come off some proper minutes. So no, that one cost them and definitely allowed Mariners back in. Chances either way, but the Mariners had as the whistle was about to go, just had chance after chance there and really had all of the momentum. So I don't know if either team are really happy. They as you said, they both definitely would be feeling like they should have won. I think not just taking the draw in that. But some interesting storylines to come out of this one. I think for the Mariners setup specifically, we saw some interesting choices in the starting lineup. So Dylan Perret-Cullen gets his start. Pavlecic drops out of the squad altogether, and it was actually Wachowski who took up the spot on the bench. So that was going on the theme of young keepers this season, or this round even. That was another one that we saw, and I thought he was, not positionally the same as Beach, and it wasn't called upon as often as Beach was, so he couldn't really show his shot stopping ability, which I think he definitely has. But he was, on the ball, he was really confident and can really dictating the tempo in that build up phase. He's often had his studs on the ball and was really calm back there. Having a season in the Mariners MPL side last year, he looked, at the level as he made the step up. And then you have Bradley Tapp as well coming into centre back. Obviously, Sainsbury's out to the new year. Tapp looked really comfortable. I think, Jackson said in the press conference that he wanted to see the midfield qualities that Tapp has shown in that centre of defence. So we saw Tapp, starting a lot of the first phases of attacks and really confident on the ball as well. So that's an interesting decision that Paul was left on the bench, and they preferred Tapp. But yeah, Jacko did say that they've tried this in training. They had no reason to believe that it wouldn't work, and I think Nilo, they did keep the clean sheet as kind of as open as the game was for a fair bit. He was proven right, so he made the decision and was backed up there, and I think Tapp won man of the match. I'm not too sure for the Mariners player of the match, at least, I think. So yeah, it shows some extra depth. I think there was some worries around that team about depth at centre back. We said without Caltech and Sainsbury, beyond that, they don't really look like they have many options, or at least we haven't seen them be tested. But this shows that they do have that versatility to have some depth in that squad and that centre back position.
Probably another game here, Jacob, where both teams are maybe close towards par of what we were expecting from them. Victory When they had 11 men, dominated a lot of the possession in the game. Similar kind of themes, have a lot of the ball, maybe not too much action in the final third. And then the Mariners, as Will said, maybe a little bit lacking in depth and quality and maybe not quite clicking. And even when they did have the man advantage, we probably saw it there that they just probably didn't quite have enough to get the win over the line.
Well, yeah, and I think the interesting thing that I noticed from this game was, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, but long balls. Both teams were playing a lot of proper good old hoofball, but for different reasons. The victory, it was because they had the confidence of the likes of Valadon and Teague in the midfield to win the second ball should the rebound come back that way, right? And they did more often than not. Mariners, it was a different story, right? In that losing Nisbet in the middle, they don't have that creative outlet through the centre of the park. So they had to play more direct and they had to play up the wings a lot more. And so we saw these two teams playing these long balls forward, but for very different reasons. And I just found that was quite an interesting sort of development because neither of these teams are the sort that you would expect to play that sort of way, at least based on what they did last season, right? Victory, like to slow things down, play patiently. And while the Mariners were direct and like to attack on the counter, it was never just these long balls being bombed forwards. That was, the Mariners side of 3-4 years ago, but not the Mariners of last season. So, it was interesting to see them make these adjustments based on on the Mariners side of things, it was their personnel, right? And we mentioned just there that, they perhaps don't have the depth or the quality that they have had, but, that they've been able to find something that kind of works for them. I mean, every now and again, they did get on the ball in that attacking third and it felt like something might happen, and especially when they had that man advantage. But, for the most part, they did struggle. And I think that, that's because of the loss of Nisbet in the middle to really sort of pull the strings, because he had a bunch of different roles and evolved throughout last season, but he remained pretty staunchly central, whether it was slightly deeper or further advanced and higher up the pitch. He was still in a more central role, and they really sort of missed that, whereas the Victory know that they've got a really strong midfield, and so that playing those long ball forwards is sort of that that sort of Mikel Arteta type play where you've got these big strong forwards up front who can challenge for the ball as it goes forwards, and then hopefully it falls into the midfield where you've got these players who are really adept at winning the ball in ground duels, who can play these really nice passes, and you've got good quality out wide as well that they can work the ball out to. So for me that was the big takeaway, was how these two teams sort of devolved into what some people I guess sort of look at and would deem sort of medieval football, but it kind of worked, and it was for these different reasons. It wasn't just, this is really simple, let's just do that and hope it works. It was a case of, right, Mariners, right, we need to do this because we don't have XYZ. Victory, we're going to do this because we have XYZ, so we know that it's going to work. So that was sort of an interesting battle that I saw going on throughout the match there. And that was, my big takeaway was that while these two teams have these identities of how they want to play the game, they're both able to adjust, and it sort of works out for them because of the quality of the coaching, the smarts of the coaching, but also the quality of the players that they have on the pitch.
So what you're telling me, sorry, I have a good joke lined up. So what you're telling me is that we're entering into this Hannah Montana best of both worlds era of the A-League, where you got the innovation of a back three, but then the old classic of just hoof it long.
Just launching it long, yeah, that's right.
But just piggybacking off that Jacob, I think exactly. You touched on it as well. That from the Mariners' point of view, it was a personnel issue, and Mikel Almont's a really good player, but he's pretty functional. He's not a progressive passer. He's that short passer. Yeah. Excellent at finding teammates, around him and receiving the ball under pressure, turning into space and releasing a fullback and stuff like that. And I think Nisbet last season would have been the perfect pairing with McCalmont. I really, really, really would have wanted to see that midfield. I think they would have been just a perfect middle pairing. So drop Nisbet a little deeper from what we were seeing him last year. I think that's exactly, what they needed. But then, you had the two big options, and Jackson spoke about this as well in his press conference after that. They hadn't really lined up with the two traditional number nines before. They had that big physical presence up top. I mean, Edmo's massive, and Qual is so strong and just goes for everything. He's just out there charging at every ball, and it looks a little goofy at sometimes. But he's just, he wants everything. He hunts everything down. And I think, as you were saying, they were playing that long ball just because they felt like Edmo and Qual could win it. Even I saw them when they were playing out from goal kicks and even launching it long. The Mariners were in their 4-4-2 kind of set-up phase. But then the Qual and Edmondson would be so wide, they would go into a corner each, and then they would look to win the ball, knock it down for a winger. So they weren't looking to play centrally at all. They had on the set plays like that where they could control the phase and the setup. Edmondson and Qual were just sitting on either side basically as where a winger would normally be. And you could just see that was the goal, was to play that diagonal or play that ball into their feet and look for the knockdown. So rudimentary, but I don't know. They didn't create too much out of the striker partnership. So I don't know if we'll continue to see that as the season goes on.
Fascinating. All right. Well, the final game of the round that we're yet to cover was Wellington Phoenix against Western United. Perhaps a surprising draw for some, Jacob, 1-1. I know people have a lot more stocks in Wellington than they do Western. But for me, this isn't one of the results that moves those expectations around a fair bit for me. Wellington were hampered by player unavailability. Paulo Retre injured, Stefan Kolokovsky, Marco Rojas, 3 players that you would have imagined would feature in or around their starting 11. They had to shift up the way they played a little bit. Western United looked good in patches. I think they had some really good individual pieces of quality shine through. Yeah. But I don't think this result is of huge concern for Wellington first game of the season.
No, I was one that I was never expecting Wellington to come out all guns blazing and put 4 past Western United, even though it's, home opener against a side that many are tipping to be one of the worst in the competition, off the back of a really strong season, but one where you're perhaps a bit disappointed you didn't win anything. I never was like, oh yeah, they'll go and they'll just handily dominate this match and score a bunch of goals and it will look easy for them. Like Wellington, they always do the hard work to get their results. It's a matter of fact. That's how they do it. And it was the same case here, because they just it just looked good in patches, but they just lacked that. I don't know. It didn't feel clinical in front of goal at all. It just chances wasted. Tim Payne had a good chance that I remember. I think it might have been in the first half where he blazes one over the bar, and I'm thinking, you've got to get that on target. Like there were just these opportunities for them that went missing, and look, it's not surprising because that's what we saw last season, and that's why they ran a lot of close results last season. Was that they were really strong defensively, but couldn't take every chance that they made going forwards. Bit sort of inverse to MacArthur, right? Where MacArthur has looked really strong defensively and taken every chance that they've that they've made up in the attacking third. Wellington were really good defensively, but didn't take all those chances. So, they've got a bit of work to do in that attacking third. I think Costa Barbarouses looked pretty decent again. Obviously got the goal. Was that his 100th in the A-League as well, I think?
Might have been, yeah.
I think he joins a pretty exclusive club there, so well done to him. And he's been around forever, it feels like, and he's still scoring. And last season was a real revelation for him, sort of reinvigorate his career, and it looks like he's already starting out on the right foot here. But outside of that, Wellington didn't have a huge number of really solid performances. Alex Rufer looked okay. It's about what we've come to expect from him, right? Wasn't anything spectacular from him, just an average display. Their new keeper, Oluwayumi, again, just looked okay. I don't think he quite had the aerial presence, especially from set pieces. He was quite timid, didn't control and command his box as much as you'd like to see from a keeper nowadays, which when Western United, their lineup are very, very tall. Obviously, they've now got Hiroshi Ibasuki up front, who's always a threat from set pieces with his head. You really need that goalkeeper to be strong in the air, and I don't think that he quite was. He was a bit timid. Perhaps it's because, obviously, first game, new club, doesn't want to make any silly mistakes or anything, and he didn't make any mistakes, which is a good thing. But I do think that there's a bit of work to be done there. And then, on the Western side of things, again, I just wasn't overly excited by anything that I saw from them. I think that they wasted a lot of really good set pieces in the first half. Wellington kept giving away these sloppy little fouls around the edge of the box, and the deliveries in from the likes of Matt Grimaldi just were not good enough, weren't finding heads, overhit, just going out for goal kicks, really not utilising the threat and those opportunities that were sprung up from Wellington mistakes. And I just mentioned Hiroshi Ibisuki. If you can get him in the game early, he can go on and have a huge game and get that hat trick for you and win the game. But they just couldn't find his head on these set pieces. They had a bunch of corners, couldn't find anything. A bunch of free kicks, couldn't find anything. So it was just wasted set pieces from Western United. So that's something that Aloisi's going to, I'm sure, come down really hard on in training and make sure that they work on those, because you've got to take those chances when they're given to you. It's something that we've complained about, the Australia side, with not taking chances when they're given them from set pieces. Same applies at club level. You've got to take those chances, and they just quite didn't. The real standout for me from Western United was Riku Danzaki. I thought he looked very, very good, dynamic on the ball, liked to drive, had a chance in the second half where this was just before a slew of changes were made. So I think about maybe 50, 60 minutes in. And he just drives centrally, sort of parting the Red Sea, where it's actually good off the ball movement from his counterparts. I think it was Angus Thurgate and Hiroshi Ibisuki made these splitting runs to draw the centre backs away, and Danzaki could just keep going central, and he just kept going, kept driving. And then he had a pass on. He had that diagonal through to Ibisuki, decided not to play it and took the shot himself and missed. But, he showed signs of that explosiveness and that creativity and initiative from midfield that Western United are probably going to need a little bit of this season. And I think that for me, he was probably Western's best player. I think Barbarouses was probably Wellington's best player. And yeah, like you said, it didn't tip the scales for me in favour of either side. I thought that, Western were uninspiring and Wellington played about how I expected them to.
Well, one of the challenges of being Wellington Phoenix is that in pre-season it's very hard to get, decent quality practice matches. That's made even more difficult when, you exit the Australia Cup in the round of 32. And then another challenge of being a successful Wellington Phoenix side is that you also have a very new squad. And so you need those high quality games for the players to be able to gel together. And Italiano was quite open about it and said, he set a timeline of 4 to 6 weeks until we really start to see the product of a lot of what they've been working on in pre-season. So it feels like more to come from the Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's things you can look at that they did in this game and recognize that it could work. So there's definitely things there that will just improve as the time goes on. And we saw, how important it was. I think Auckland did a massive preseason tour and definitely, invested heavily into coming over to Australia, and seemed like they were here every second day in preseason. It was that was so important for them. And obviously, the Phoenix are a bit underdone because they just didn't have that opportunity. So I don't know. I think the game as well, I think you lose Kraev as well was so key to them last season. It just seemed Barbarouses is a good player, but, most of his career has been a winger, and he looks like he wants to be the creator and play the final ball and things like that. And he got there for the goal, obviously, but I just don't think he's the best focal point for a team. And I think you're lacking a bit of, physical presence up top in this Wellington team. That's what it seemed to be. And I know Western United, as Jacob said, they're a big team, but it just wasn't gritty enough. And it wasn't, I think, a physical player bursting late box crashing runs like Kraev was doing last season was definitely one of the game changers. And it just seems to be, lacking this season. But obviously I think Chiefy has plans and they'll rely on other aspects of the game to kind of, that's where the improvement is going to come from. So no, and interesting to watch it start to click together. I think they'll be, they'll get it going. As you said, 4 to 6 weeks is what Chiefy said. So, expect a few of these results before then.
All right, there you go. There is your round one in review. A couple of Asian Champions League games coming up this week, Jacob. The Mariners are in action at 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time on Tuesday against Kevin Muscat Shanghai Port, which promises to be a fascinating encounter. And then Sydney FC as well, 9 p.m. on Wednesday against Senfrecce Hiroshima. Potentially a little homecoming of sorts. Actually, no, the game's in Senfrecce, sorry, but Tolgai Arslan is the matchup where I'm alluding to there. Some big games for Sydney FC. If they win that, then they go into pole position in terms of top of the group, and the Mariners really trying to respond from the first two match days and get something on the board.
These are the two sort of big matchups from an Australian football point of view.
Yeah,
Like, these are the ones that we circled, and we're like, let's keep an eye out for these ones. And they're finally here, and it's kind of cool, and kind of exciting. And they're two very good teams. And I'll tell you what, Mariners and Sydney are going to have a lot of work to do to get results here, because Shanghai Port, obviously a very, very strong side under Kevin Muscat, and Sanfrecce, they have been a mainstay in Japanese and Asian football for a long, long time. And now with Toge Arslan, who was one of the best players in the league last season, going over there as well, that's huge. So no, you're right. They're important games for both sides, but they're also going to be very, very difficult. It's not going to be easy or light work for either of them. And I mean, look, you can't expect any games in these continental competitions to be easy or light work, but these two especially are probably going to be the most difficult fixtures these teams are going to come up, and they just happen to be the same week. Just one night away from each other, which is pretty just a kind of a cool coincidence, I suppose.
Yeah, going bang bang. All right, that will do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Will Booth, thank you. Hope you enjoyed week 1 of A-League football.
So good to be back. Peak A-League is here.
Absolutely. Jacob Stevens, thank you as well.
It's been a pleasure as always, Lockie.
All right, we'll be back on Friday for those Asian Champions League games and to preview round 2 of the A-League. It is back. We are back. We never really went anywhere, but I don't know. We'll say. Thank you all very much for listening at home. We appreciate your company as always. We'll see you then. Goodbye.